What's up, guys, and welcome to Mass Effect Talks. This is episode 13. Today, I'm going to be talking about a character that I think is considered a minor character in Mass Effect, but only because he doesn't show up very much. He is an important character, though. He's also one of my favorite Mass Effect characters, and his name is David Edward Anderson. I'm probably going to be referring to him as Captain Anderson for most of the video, just because that's what we've known him as, Captain Anderson. But later on we find out that he is promoted to Admiral. Not in everybody's saves, and I'll go into this later, but in Mass Effect 3, it seems like no matter what your save was in Mass Effect 2, he's an Admiral, because that's what he's called in Mass Effect 3, Admiral Anderson. I think it's kind of important to to talk about Anderson, just because I think he might be playing a big role in Mass Effect 3. And I actually hope he will be, because I see a very useful role for Anderson in Mass Effect 3. And I'll go into this towards the end, but first let me just talk a little bit about him, so you know a little bit of his background and all that. He's 46 years old at the beginning of Mass Effect 1. He was born in London, but he doesn't have an English accent, and there's actually a reason for that. In the novel Mass Effect Revelation, it says why he doesn't have an English accent. I'll read it to you. The file showed Anderson had been born and raised in London, but he had almost no discernible accent. His generic dialect was likely the product of cross-culture exposure through e-schooling and the infonets, combined by a steady barrage of pan-global entertainment vids and music. So he kind of lost his accent because of all that, because of his education, because of everything he was exposed to. So he just lost the accent. He was the original captain of the Normandy. He was also one of the first graduates of the N7 training program on Arcturus Station. At this point, he was 20 years old, so he graduated when he was 20. And for those of you that wonder what N7 stands for, it's actually a code. The N stands for Special Forces, and the 7 is like the highest rank. That's what it stands for. So Special Forces, like the highest rank of Special Forces. That's what N7 means. And for those of you that don't know what the Arcturus Station is, it's a human station. It's basically the capital of the Alliance, and it's also the headquarters of the Alliance Navy. So it's like, that's where everything takes place. And Anderson graduated from there, from the N7 training. He served in the First Contact War with honors. He was also married at that time to his wife, Cynthia. And you find this out in the book Revelation. So he was married when he was pretty young, because he was, I don't know exactly how old he was when he got married. I read this a long time ago, so I don't remember if it even says it in here. I was trying to go back and look through it, but I don't remember if it said when he got married. Turns out he also has 2 sons, and I don't remember if it mentioned that in this either. Where you find out is in the dossiers at the end of the Shadow Broker downloadable content. There's a dossier for for Captain Anderson, and it says that it mentions his wife Cynthia. She sends him like an email, I guess, like a message, saying, like, telling him about his. It doesn't say his sons. It doesn't actually say that they're his sons, but it's like you're almost like, well, obviously it's got to be his kids. They're not kids though. They're already, like, one of them is like a aerospace engineer, and the other one graduated from who knows what school. I think maybe Marines or something. But yeah, I was like, wow, when did they have the kids then? If he was married already by the time he was 20. So they probably had kids, like, before that, because they got divorced. Cynthia and him got divorced, like, right, like, towards the beginning of this book. So he was still, like, in his 20, maybe he was still in his 20s when he got divorced. So I was like, when did they have kids? I don't know. Maybe they had kids like way before the book. I don't know. Whatever. Cynthia divorced Anderson. Poor Anders. I feel so bad for Anderson because he was kind of hurt. But she divorced him because he was never around. He was always on duty. So she just got tired of that and divorced him. Something that not a lot of people know is that Anderson is actually the main character in this book. And one of the main characters in Retribution, the last novel of Mass Effect. He's not in Ascension. He's mentioned in Ascension, but he's not a main character. So he's a big part of the novels. I don't know if you guys remember in Mass Effect 1, like in the beginning, when Anderson is talking to Shepard and they're talking about Saren. Anderson says that he had met Saren a long time ago and that they had this history, and he goes into it a little bit. That history is what this book is about. So this is about when Anderson meets Saren and why and what happens and all that. So what Anderson basically tells him is that it was Saren's fault that Anderson didn't get the Spectre status that he was being considered for. So because of Saren, Anderson didn't become a Spectre. Anderson becomes XO, and that's an executive officer, like the second in command in a ship of the SSV Hastings. By this time, he's like 28. So during this time, he goes on a mission to this place called Sidon, and he's a research facility on Sidon is attacked, and he goes and researches, and he goes and checks why, what happened, and all that. And he finds out that there's only one survivor, one of the scientists that actually wasn't present during the attack, and that turns out to be Kali Sanders. I guess you could say she's the main character of all 3 books. She's in all of them. So Anderson goes and looks for her to question her and see what she knows and all that. Because it turns out that there was a traitor in the research facility, and he has to know what's going on. Later, he finds out by one of the commanding officers that in the research facility, the scientists there were actually studying illegally artificial intelligence. So that's what Anderson has to go and like find out what the hell they were doing and what was it and all that stuff. And he finds Kali, and he finds out that she's actually the daughter of one of the Alliance's like war heroes, John Grissom. He's a rear admiral at this point. He's the head honcho, and Anderson didn't know this. So he goes and talks to Grissom, and he's like, "Did you know that your daughter was involved in this whole deal and all that?" And he says, he basically tells Anderson that he had sent her away so that she'd be safe. So that's one of the reasons why she wasn't in the research facility during the attack. I'm not going to go into detail of this book, but this is basically how he meets Kali Anderson, because Kali becomes a pretty important part to Anderson, because he actually develops feelings for her, like really strong feelings, and they go through a lot in the book. They team up together, and Saren finds out that this whole AI research stuff in this research facility, turns out that they were studying Sovereign. They were studying the Reapers, basically. And when Saren finds out, he's like, oh my gosh, this is probably what I've been waiting for all my life. Because he wants to find something that will put the Turians above the humans, and he thinks that Sovereign is like the ultimate like weapon for the Turians to have. So that's why he's so interested in it. That's why he wants that information. So right now, the only person that knows anything about that is Kali. So he goes after Kali, but never showing his real intentions. Anderson and him are always butting heads because Saren is a Spectre at this point already. And Anderson doesn't really understand why Saren is so like so into this. Like he knows that something's going on with Saren, but he doesn't understand his motives. Kali gets abducted by a Krogan and taken to this refinery, this Element Zero refinery, and Saren and Anderson go to the refinery to save Kali, but it turns out Anderson finds out that Saren was going there for different reasons. It turns into this big huge gunfight, and Saren is destroying the refinery, like the Element Zero, so it's like blowing up, and there's innocent people in there, and Anderson is able to save Kali, take her out of there, but the refinery ends up like getting destroyed, and a bunch of people die. When they go back to the Citadel, Saren actually blames this all on Anderson, saying that he had no choice. He had no other option but to start firing because Anderson had alerted the guards. So he had to become hostile. So it was all Anderson's fault. So the council, being the council, the jerks that they've always been, they believed Saren, and they completely took Anderson off the whole Spectre thing. So that they didn't approve him being a Spectre. So they never gave him that status, and because of what Saren said. So that's why there's that little feud between them. And then Anderson knows how far Saren could go. So that's why when he finds out that Saren has gone rogue, he's like, you have to stop him, because he'll go to whatever limits to do what he wants to do. At the end of Revelation, that's where Anderson wants to start like a relationship with Kali, but Kali's like, no, this will never work because of my job, and you're in the military and you're just growing in there. So they both go their own ways, and they don't see each other again for a while. In Mass Effect, because this is before Mass Effect 1, so this is what happens then. And then Mass Effect 1 starts. In the beginning, this is when Anderson gives up the Normandy and gives it to Shepard instead, because Shepard was made a Spectre. And Anderson says, you could do more good than I could. So he gives him the Normandy, and he stays on the Citadel. Even though you leave Anderson early on, he's always there to guide Shepard and to help him in whatever way. One of the scenes that I love that just kind of tell you exactly who Anderson is, the type of guy that he is. And I love Anderson because he's so loyal to what he believes in and to Shepard. And I mean, in Mass Effect 1, towards the end of Mass Effect 1, when the Normandy is in lockdown, where you can't leave the docking bay of the Citadel, and Anderson's like, you have to leave because you have to stop Saren and you have to stop the Reapers. There's two choices. There's two things that Anderson can do to help you leave the Citadel, but they both risk Anderson being charged with treason. But Anderson says, I don't care. He's like, you have to go. You have to go to Ilos and stop Saren. So he could do two things. It depends on what you choose for Anderson to do. One of them, he goes to the actual panel, like the actual security panel on the docking bay to take the security off, to take the lockdown off the Normandy so that Shepard could leave. But he's going against C-Sect officers. So he just goes and was like, and there's C-Sect officers in the back behind him, and they're like, get away from the panel, whatever. And he doesn't. He just keeps on like taking the thing off, and he gets shot in the process. And it's like, oh my God, that just tells you what kind of a guy Anderson is. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if he gets tried for treason. He doesn't care if he gets shot. He doesn't even care if he gets killed or anything. But he's gonna do what he has to do for Shepard to do his job. It's either that, or he goes into Udina's office and manually takes off like the security code or whatever. He like overrides it on Udina's computer, because Udina, was the one that put the lockdown anyways. him and the council. So on Udina's computer, he could override it. So he goes into Udina's office and just punches Udina, and I was like, ow! That's like the best. If you chose that scene, like when he gets shot, it's just sad to me. I'm like, oh my god, that sucks. But when he would choose the scene for him to punch Udina is just, it's the best. It's like epic. It's like one of the most epic scenes in Mass Effect when Anderson punches Udina. Oh, I love that scene so much. He just knocks him out, and Udina's like, ow. And Anderson just does the little thingy, and Shepard could leave.